every one of them is great, and I would welcome anybody that you can think of. Please send it in the chat box with their contact, and that'd be great. But I got suggested Luther Wood, and I called him, and he got back with me, and man, and now I can see that he's as handsome as he is charming. So he, like every other person that I call, after they check out that I'm not an Amway salesman, uh, they want to know, like, so what do we really do? Like what the hell, like what do you want? And I go, well, this is kind of what we do. We read this, you talk, and then then the question goes, yeah, but I mean, like, specifically, you want me to just tell my story? You want me to do this? And I said, I really don't know what I want. I think you should have fun with it, and I think you'll have a good time, and see where this relates, where you can relate to this, and so, Luther, looking very much forward to hearing you speak tonight, and the floor is yours. Take it away, man.
All right, Sam, you are very, very kind. Thank you. My name is Luther Wood, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm a really bad, outrageous alcoholic, okay? Which you will find out in a few minutes, I hope. Two of my heroes are on this page. That's Julie and Gary Brown. We go back a long, long way, and I've been so fortunate to give a retreat in their hometown there, and it's just been marvelous. So, and that I think Bill's emotional sobriety speaks a lot about love, and there's a line in our book that says a fellowship will grow up around us, and I don't know exactly when that happened to me, but a fellowship grew up around me. It could have been that very first morning that when I came to, and I happened to be in an alcoholic household, and there were about 5 or 6 people sitting around the kitchen table and talking this, what I call magic language. And the reason I call it that is because, everybody and his brother tried to get me sober. I had ministers, psychiatrists, psychologists, my family, people begging me, trying to get me there. And they weren't able to do that. And yet that morning, that very first morning in Alcoholics Anonymous, believe me when I tell you, I came here with no hope, none whatsoever, and I'm sitting on the edge of my seat and shaking like a leaf. And my friend Shirley was there that morning. She said, one drink's too many and 1,000's not enough. And my head blew up and I started to cry. And I hadn't cried in years. You couldn't make me cry, And I started to sob like a child because I thought, oh my God, they're like me. See, I didn't know you existed. I didn't know there was anything like this. I was circling the drain and I knew it, I've been in the nut house 5 times and I knew that they were coming to get me any time, that I was just one step out of a straitjacket or jail or whatever. And so anyway, my friend Shirley there that morning said, one drink's too many and 1,000's not enough. And I just blew up. I just, and so that began my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love the word journey. It's journée. It's a French word. Journée means a day's trip. And they asked me that morning. They said, "Can you not drink for one day?" And I said, "Any fool cannot drink for one day." And they said, "Well, that's how we're doing it. We're just doing this one day at a time." And you know what? I've been doing this for this won't. Gary won't think much of this because he's got, I believe, 60 something years now. And but I'm here 48 and a half years, and that is totally impossible. I in Bill Wilson's story, he says, God comes to most people slowly, but its impact on me was sudden and profound. And I wrote my sobriety date right there, 8/15/72, because I never drank again from the moment I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. And if that isn't sudden and profound, I don't know what is, So I was struck sober right then and there. And you know what? I had been drinking for 3 weeks. I was dirty. I hadn't changed clothes. I hadn't bathed. I hadn't shaved. Hadn't done anything. I had this wild afro, me and Angela Davis. and I didn't smell too good or know or whatever. But you know what? These people didn't say a damn word about that. They said, you come and go with us, and you'll never have to drink again, one day at a time. They made Alcoholics Anonymous so attractive to me that I would follow them anywhere on the planet. And I will follow you anywhere today. I have come here when my cat died, when my grandmother died, when babies were born, celebrations were made, and so on and so forth. Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't have any place else to go. By the time I got here, I burned everybody out, And so these people picked me up and took me along. I love Rose Kennedy. Rose Kennedy said something. She said, "Or for to whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required." I had been given a great deal in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't think I could ever pay it back in a lifetime, but I'm trying to do that. So anyway, this meeting has caused me to really look at some things here, and to look at this emotional recovery, that Bill wrote about in 1958. And he was 24 years sober when he wrote that. And I think maybe if he'd lived a little longer, he might have achieved emotional sobriety. Now, don't think I've killed the founder, okay? I have not done that, but nobody's perfect here, and that's the thing I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. We're seeking perfection. We're not going to be perfect, but that's our goal. That's the thing that we look on toward, and try to go forward to, and so. Bill was 37 years sober at his death, and 75 years old too, by the way. Some things that I have here. I took some notes on in this on the front page of this reading. It says Mr. Hyde became our main task, and I call my Mr. Hyde Elmer. And I hope nobody's name is Elmer on here. I don't mean that derogatorily, but I call him Elmer. He just sits on my shoulder all the time, and Elmer's the 10% of me that's never going to get it. And, if you knew how many times, he's the 5-year-old driving the car, So I have to take the keys away from Elmer on a constant basis and keep on walking here. Otherwise, I get caught in this trap of Mr. Hyde or Elmer, Bill says over here, he says, I found I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, indeed upon any act of circumstances whatsoever. And I just wrote a little note there and I said, don't you think maybe you should have just collapsed and given in and turned it all over to God? And you know why? You know why I say that? Because I can't do this thing. I can't handle anything hardly anymore. I'm not capable. This program is designed for you and me to find this power, to gain access to this power. And before I even started talking today, I asked God to come. He is so generous to me, and I asked him, come and please help me, because I can't do these things by myself. I can't do anything by myself anymore. And I don't want to do anything by myself anymore. I love the idea, in that second step of ours, when it says we found the great reality within us, what do you think it's talking about? The great reality is a capitalized word that means God, and it says we found the great reality deep within us. All my life, I've been out there looking for God, someplace else, wherever. It never was out there. It's the biggest secret of all time that God is within me. He is within every person on this page. He is within us, and so he's closer than my next breath. And I'm able to go to him and ask him and beg him if I have to please come and help me, get through all this stuff. So, here it says, I could not avail myself to God's love until I was able to offer it back to him by loving others as he would love me. And I'm going to tell you something my sponsor, Clint Hodges, said to me. It was the most... I love him so much. Clint Hodges changed my life at 25 years of sobriety. He took me through these steps. I don't know if you know my story, but I wasn't wrapped too tight when I got here. I was crazy as a loon, I've been in the nut house 5 times. Come on, I could barely, honest to God, barely get 2 sentences in the same paragraph, And Clint Hodges just took me through these steps, and I gained an experience. I gained access to this power. And he used to tell me, he said, Luther, and I just told you that the great reality is within us, right? He said, God will love you through me, Luther, and he will love you. God will love you through me, and he will love me through you. And I found out that this thing is reciprocal, reciprocal. When I'm with you, even on this page, I can feel you. I see you. You know, I love that thought in Avatar when he says, "I see you, and I can see you. I can hear you, just like I could hear Shirley that morning. You know, I heard her. I heard this magic language that changed my life." So anyway, that's what Clint told me about that, and it says. Oh, and out over here on the next page, this seems to be the primary healing circuit, an outgoing love of God's creation and his people, by means of which we avail ourselves of his love for us. Okay. Uh, and that is so significant because I have been given a great gift, and I don't know what I'd do without it. Every single morning of my life when I wake up, the first thing I think of is, please let me, I'm talking to God, right? I said, please let me be of service to you and to our people. You know, I got it in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I owe it back to Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe that I carry this thing around with me all day long in all my affairs, you know, I hope I'm able to help anybody whenever, wherever I am, even in the supermarket or whatever. You know, I can't tell you how many times I'm standing there in the supermarket minding my own business when some little old grandmother nudges right up next to me. It's as if we had a white collar on or something, right? And she starts telling me about her grandchild and how he's a drug addict and he can't do this and he can't do that, blah, 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 blah. I've reached in my pocket, I can't tell you how many times, and pulled out my card and said, you have him call this number. I think there's help on the other end of the line here. You know? So that's who we are. We carry this thing into all our affairs. People know somebody different came into their lives when we show up on the scene on a daily basis. You know, somebody bring something. Somebody didn't want anything. They just came to give. And I love that about us. You know, we don't get paid. We don't want anything as a result of this. You know, we just want to share our experience, strength, and hope with one another in love, just like Chuck Chamberlain used to talk about, and how Gary Brown talked about it. One of the retreats that he gave at in Malibu that year. So anyway, those are pretty much my comments on emotional sobriety. And I don't know. I think emotional sobriety might be something that it's a lifetime process. We get spoon fed, you and I. I get about as much as I can handle of anything in one day, and I believe that this is it's just like our 10th step. It's a lifetime proposition, and so I tell the guys that I sponsor all the time, I hope you're in this for the long run. Why? Because we're in it for the long run. We get spoon fed, like I just said, on a daily basis here. And if I'm in it for the long run, I'm going to be given whatever I need on it in any given day, at any given time. Another friend of mine, Don Pritz, used to say something quite phenomenal. He said, God uses whatever is at hand. And I believe that. I believe that down to my big toe. I this year, along in January of last year, I'm sitting there minding my own business. I have a strange type of meditation. I'm not one of these woo, 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 woo people, but I do connect with the power every single morning of my life. And I'm inclined to read, that portion of the book. And I read it in Spanish now, too, by the way, Upon Awakening. I went back to school. Imagine this. I was 75 years old when I went back to school. And I thought, I have to get my degree. I left school in 1959 at Loyola University. And and never went back. I joined the Navy to get away from me, and I didn't know that I took myself wherever I went. So I got in more trouble in the Navy than I could stand, and so I never went back to school after 1959. And I went to a graduation ceremony there. A friend of mine that graduated, and I was standing on the embankment up there, and I thought, I threw my life away, you know. And then as I went down the hill toward the football field to see my friend, I thought, no, I did not. I did not throw my life away. I wanted to show up. I said I would show up. I promised I would show up. I'm an alcoholic. I couldn't show up, you know. So anyway, right then and there, I decided to go back to school, and I went back to school and I got my degree. Okay, in 1959, my major was French, but I speak French now. So, and I speak sign language too, by the way. Now, if you want an experience, I found out with sign language, you know, it doesn't matter if you're talking English, French, or Spanish, or whatever, or sign language, the message gets transmitted to that person. I have seen the light go on in Jimmy. Jimmy is 36 years sober now. And he's stone deaf. He has never heard a sound ever, you know. And I remember the night that he and I were sitting there, we were talking really, really fast, trying to get to a commitment at our meeting, you know, and I saw the light go on in Jimmy's eyes. If that ever happens to you, you will die. You will know what this is all about. Just like when I went into a drunk's house in Tucson, Arizona, he'd been in there drinking a long time, you know. He when I pulled up at his front in the front yard there, the car that was in the driveway had that hierba, the Spanish call it, that tall grass, you know, it had grown up through the car and out the windows. I thought, oh my God, he's in trouble. This guy is really in trouble. And I went in that house. That was the filthiest house I have ever been in my life. I'm telling you, there was 1.5 feet of trash on the other side of that door that I pried open because he's so drunk, you know, he didn't come to the front door. I just broke in. And Gordon was laying on the sofa with his head down. It was a broken sofa, by the way. His head is down on the low part of the sofa, and he got this pair of glasses on that are thick as Coke glasses, you know, Coke bottles, and he's watching TV with no sound. And I thought, oh my God, he's mine, and and I sit on the high end of the sofa there, and I start telling Gordon my sober. I asked him, I said, Gordon, how are you? He goes, he was so drunk he could not even talk, right? So I got about halfway through my story when Gordon leaned up and looked at me, and as clear as crystal, he said, you know. And I said, yes, and now you know. You know, and that's what we're doing here. We're just carrying the message, you know, carrying our experience, strength, and hope with one another in love, you know. So I don't know what I was talking about before then, but I get all over the place sometimes, and it doesn't matter. I just let the spirit move me however it moves me, and I love that because I don't have to prepare for anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, the truth is something you don't have to rehearse. These are things that have happened to me, and so anyway, so how much time do I have here? It's 5:58. I know you got a little discussion you want to go to afterwards. So
As much as you want to. We go till 9 o'clock, so as much as you want to, Luther.
okay. Yeah, I know, but you want to participate and stuff like that. So I should probably So wish you know how I just float off into nowhere sometimes, and I don't know if it's my age or what, but I do. I know what I was talking about. You see, if you wait long enough, it comes back. So anyway, I went to school and I changed my major to Spanish. And I graduated this year. I have my degree in Spanish. I got my mortarboard, my tassel, my stole, the whole enchilada, and my degree, and I just love it. And I love Spanish more than any language I've ever learned, I believe. So I do read my morning meditation from my Spanish book in the morning, Al despertar. And I have a good accent. I'm really good at accents. I like people. I like to associate with them. I like to speak their own language if I can. Our possibilities are unlimited in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's nothing we cannot do. We just call on the power. You have to gain access to this power, and you call on it constantly. People say, well, don't you think God gets tired of it? And I said, what good's an umbrella if you don't use it when it rains? Just so I call on it a lot. I took an astronomy course this past summer as well. And I'll tell you something, that course did something to me that, Alcoholics Anonymous wakes you up. And I took that astronomy course. My teacher was Egyptian. Amira was her name. I wrote her an email the other day and sent it to her. And I said, I just want to thank you again for who you are and what you do in this world of ours. I said, your class was so fabulous and so good. You are such a dedicated teacher. And I said, your class helped me see the majesty of creation itself and the majesty of God himself, and I said, I cannot thank you enough for that. And she wrote me back the nicest little note. I don't know how many people would write her and tell her things like that, but it was the truth. As I said earlier, I'm able to see people today, for crying out loud, and hear them. That very morning when I'm sitting there jumping out of my skin, and Shirley said that one drink's too many and thousands enough, and I started to cry. That's the moment that I got cracked open in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I haven't been the same since. I was a perfect vessel at that point to receive whatever was being given to me. And these people hauled me off with them and took me every place with them. They never left me out on the street corner by myself. I couldn't afford to be left out there by myself, trust me. And they freely gave to me what had been given to them all these years. So when I ran into Clint Hodges, who I said changed my life that day, I happened to, and this is another thing, God uses whatever's in hand, right? I was at a memorial service for a friend of mine that had died, Chuck Nisbet, and Clint happened to sponsor him, and actually Clint and I actually bumped into one another that afternoon, and he turned around and looked at me and he says, "What can I do for you?" And I just fell out of my mouth. I said, "You could be my sponsor." It's the last thing on my mind that day. My first sponsor had died, second sponsor died, third sponsor died, and so Clint gave me his card, and about 3 weeks later, after he was my sponsor, he said, "Luther, I wonder if you'd be interested in doing something." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "I wonder if you'd be interested in going through this process with me." And that, it just made me crazy for a minute. I was 25 years sober. I said, "I'll have to get back to you." And I drove off. And when I got home, I called him up because I thought on the way home, I thought, you know what? You said if you ask anybody to be your sponsor, you would do whatever they said without question. So what is this? And so I called him up and I said, "Clint, I need to sit down with you and talk to you. And so he said, "Meet me at the marina on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock and bring your big book with you." So I met him in the marina, and we sat in the booth. And I said, "Clint, I agree to do what you want me to do, but I want to know, why would you ask me to do it?" And he said, "For two reasons, Luther Wood. Number one," he says, "I don't think you're having enough fun." And he said, secondly, there's a loneliness about you that I cannot bear. And oh my God, that struck me right in the heart because I knew that he saw straight through to me. Only I knew about the loneliness, you know? And so he said, open that book to page 52. And we opened the book to there and we read the bedevilments. And he said to me, do any of these things apply to you right now? And I said, well, frankly, most of them do. And he says, well, don't we know what the problem is then? He said, the bedevilments are a test for untreated alcoholism. So that's what you're suffering from, you know? And so we started out on this journey, he and I, and he took me through these steps. And it changed my life because I had that experience. And once you have that experience, it can never ever be taken away from you. You know, we have that sense of being alone or being or God went up fishing and took vacation or whatever. You know, I have to tell you that's not possible. Chuck C. drew a picture one time of a circle with all kinds of little dots in it and things. He said, all these little dots are all the people in all the universes, all the planets, and everything in it, everywhere, you know. And he said, the thing we think that is possible sometimes is there's a dot outside this circle, and we think that that's possible. And he said, it's not possible. It's a lie. It's only possible as an experience. It's not real. We can't be outside the circle. There is no life apart from, you know, and have come to know that that is absolutely true. And every time Elmer, my friend over here, or Mr. Hyde, whatever you want to call him, I got somebody that calls him Igor, and doesn't matter what you call him, you know, you just have to take the car keys away from him and keep right on walking here. So anyway, Clint Hodges changed my life, and we started down this road together, and it's amazing. It's been the most amazing experience of my lifetime. I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I have arrived. Uh, like I said, I'm on this journey. I think we're all on this journey. I think it's the journey of a lifetime, and it takes a lifetime to live it and to experience it. And if we're real lucky, we get spoon-fed along the way, you know, every single day. So I think that's about all I have to say about it. Sam, if you guys want to share and do all that kind of stuff, I could go on and tell more of my story, but I hope you know that.
Well, the first things first. Number one, I really appreciate you sharing, Luther, and why I have you on the forward to the third edition in the third paragraph. It says down here in the sentence, the 12 steps that summarize the program may be called Los Dos Pesos in one country or La Dulce Etapes in another. What's the correct pronunciation for either one of those?
Los 12 pasos.
Okay.
Los 12 pasos and les 12 étapes.
All right. There we go. So I always just did it with confidence in a certain way and let people think that I knew how to pronounce it correctly. If you just look somebody in the eye or you just say it with enough confidence, they'll think you know what you're talking about. But I was really curious. Now that we got a man that speaks, you know, French and Spanish. So
sign language, that's the steps.
Nice. So here's what we do. We usually have the person who moderates look on the screen and call on a few people, and then we'll open it up. And tonight, I think we do it a little different. That if anybody can share their experience with this, share with Luther, or ask Luther a question if they want to. Yeah. So why don't you pick a few people on the AA Hollywood Squares here?
Well, I got to hear from Gary and Julie here. So one of you.
Thanks, Luther. God, it's good to see you. Just wonderful. And thanks for talking about Clint. Just briefly, I was reminded, it seemed like every time I'd run into Clint somewhere, he came out here and did the Ultimate Weekend 1 year or twice, as a matter of fact.
Mhm.
But every time he'd come around, he says, Gary, what are you going to do about that part of you that's never going to get it? I don't think I got it yet. I've been skating along right now to figure out what that part is that I'm never going to get. So
You want some help?
I don't need her help either.
I've been married so long she can say that, see.
Yeah, she can say the damn thing she wants and does.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for coming and speaking. This is a great meeting, and there's just a ton of love and an awfully good AA in this group of people here. So.
Oh yeah, I feel it. I can feel it across the.
I miss seeing you in person and giving you a hug, Luther.
You know what?
I'll never forget your story. I mean, you were certifiable and should not have been on the streets. I mean, it was incredible, incredible. And those are the people that we love.
The most, yeah.
Yeah, the most. Thank you for everything you've done, really, for me and countless others.
Of course, Alcoholics Anonymous changed my life. It turned, my mother, when I was 30 years sober, was talking to somebody on the phone whose husband was drunk all the time. My mother was looking in my eyes and she said, I used to know somebody like that, but he's dead now. She couldn't have said anything more fabulous. I mean, I don't even resemble the person that came to Alcoholics Anonymous,
Yeah. No, you don't. No, you don't.
We were talking about Clint, Gary, and I'll tell you something. Clint gave me the greatest gift anybody could give you. When he was dying that week, we were all in that house 7 days, just round the clock in that house, bringing food, doing, how we are, bringing food, making coffee, doing all this stuff, chatting, talking. And Clint had a moment with everybody. And he had a moment with me on the very last day. And he had gotten so weak that he couldn't hardly speak above a whisper, And he called me over to his bedside and he said, remember Rumi? And I said, Rumi, the poet? He said, yeah. And I said, yeah, I know Rumi. And he said, when he talks about out in the field, out with the wrongdoings and this and that. And he said he laid down in the field. And I said, and he said, I'll meet you there. And I said, I know that poem. And he said, I'll meet you there. Holy crap. You know what that did for me? It let me know that somebody would come for me. Somebody that loved would come for me. So that's a great gift, and I treasure that. Okay.
Thank you.
Richard,
Yeah.
is that you or Kathy? Who's first?
No.
Richard? I see your hand up.
Do we have a Richard?
Kathy, you want to talk? You have to unmute, honey.
Yeah. Thanks, Luther, and thanks to everybody for being here. You talked about, the man that saved your bacon. I want to thank Tom Ewell. He has changed my life. You mentioned when you were speaking, you said our children, and I fell in love with that instantly. These are our children, and we are all together. Maybe we're God's children, but I love that you used the phrase our children, and I will continue to use that. So thank you very much. It's quite obvious you're a man of love and very inspirational, Luther. Thank you for your share tonight.
Of course. Love is all there is, Richard. You ever get an email from me?
All we need is love, love, love.
You ever get an email from me? It says, life is magic. Love is the wand. That's true. Okay, Kathy, how about you, dear?
Well, Luther, you exude happy, joyous, and free. I love that. And isn't it, I think when I
when I realized what the bedevilments were. You know, it wasn't when I was out there drinking. It was, it was being a dry drunk. And at 20 years of sobriety, I had that experience. You know, of having to look at myself again. And I didn't really like what I saw. But I had a sponsor that, you know, stood beside me and encouraged me. You know, she just has so much patience because I just don't seem to get what I'm supposed to get. And I could sit with God for a while and it just, I have to experience things. You know, I can't just think them, or I can't just have somebody tell me. Somebody can tell me, but I have to experience what it's like to have a God of my own understanding that looks way different than when I came in the rooms. And I know it's God that keeps me sober. And we meet, there's a group of us that meet at 6 o'clock in the morning and do Upon Awakening. And, you know, that group is just precious to me. And the people that are lightweights and can't wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, they're just like missing out, I tell you. But you know what, I guess, and the reason why I raised my hand is I'm really curious about what your step 6 looked like at 25 years of sobriety when you walked through that with Clint.
I'd be happy to tell you that you know, it helps to have a good listener when you're taking a 5th step. Clint was a very good listener, and he was an attorney, you know, so he took a lot of notes. And at the end of my 5th step, he handed all of those notes to me, and he said, "These are your old ideas, Luther. This is how you've been operating all these years." And I looked at those old ideas, and it was like a page full of them, you know. All from my childhood all the way up till present day, you know, on how I operated in the universe. He said, "Now I want you to take these home." Because there's that line in our book that says, "Go home, review the first 5 steps, see if there's any, you know, if you approve." It's the only time in the book they ask you to review what you've done and see if you're okay with it. You know, if you are, well, he's had me sit down, write out a new idea on every single one of those things. And he said, "I want you to go for the gold. Go for the very, very best." You know, and I believe, see, as God's children, it's his pleasure to give us the kingdom, not the scraps from the friggin' table, you know? So I wrote out the very best that I could possibly hope for. And then when I went back in to his office there, he said, "You got your list, your old ideas?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Let me have them." So he held them up and made me look at him. He says, "Are you ready to get rid of these?" And I said, "Yeah." And he balled them up in a ball and threw it in the trash. I just about fainted, you know. And and then he said, "Okay, now we're ready to do step 7 here." So and I love this about Clint Hodges. When we took a 3rd step, he knelt down with me. He put his arm around me, and we said the prayer together, you know. And we did the same thing at the 7th step. We knelt down, and he put his arm around me, and we said the prayer together, you know. It's just take all of me, good and bad, blah 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 blah. You see, 4, 5, 6, 7 are a unit. They're a perfect unit. You know, when I took step 3, I had to know that I could never have my will back. Once he likened it to firing a pistol. He said, once it's been fired, it can't be unfired. Okay, and he says you need to know that that you, after in the 3rd step, that you are in a state of prayer, because everything that can rain down during the 4th step rains down. You need to know that you're in a state of prayer so that you don't get crazy, you know. And so we didn't say amen until step 7. So 4, 5, and 6, and 7 were a special place. You know, I can't tell you how many times I remembered that as I was going along, because I had never done, like I said earlier, I couldn't get 2 sentences in the same paragraph. I'd never done really work these steps, never had, you know, I couldn't get it. So Anyway, that was step 6 and 7, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Anyway, I love this program. It's just amazing. So
You want to call? You want me to take it? It's time for me to take it over. Or you want to call on a couple more people? You see some people in there that you might want to hear from, or might want to get a question from.
I see a guy named Roy here from North Carolina. I was born in South Carolina, Roy.
Good. Good. We need to get rid of some of the people in South Carolina. I'm Roy Hoosier. Listen, I'm a grateful alcoholic.
Hey, Roy.
My sobriety date March the 15th, 1972.
Ah,
So you and I are pretty close. Oh no, you sort of jogged my memory on something you said. You talked about the 12-step calls. I used to make a lot of 12-step calls.
oh yeah.
And when I first came in this program, we didn't have detox and halfway houses and that type of thing in our area. So we made a lot of 12-step calls. We had this minister came into town and opened up he called it a recovery facility, but it was more of a flop house. The only recovery program that I knew he had prayer in the morning and prayer at meals, and that's about it. But he kept the drunks clothed, and he kept them fed, and he kept them clean, and he gave them a bed to sleep in, and he gave us a place to take some people. And when you pick an old boy up at the bus station and he's got everything he owns in an Arkansas suitcase, you got to do something with him. and so he called me one day. He said that all his money came from church contributions. He said, I got a church meeting and I've got to be there, and Rudy's in DT's. Will you come sit with Rudy? And Rudy was sort of the town drunk. And before I forget it, let me tell you, Rudy died sober. But I went up there and Rudy was seeing snakes or rats or something. I don't know what he was seeing, but he was seeing them. He laid up and covered with a blanket, and every now and then he'd raise up and scream and point wherever he was seeing something. So I got a chair and a fly swatter and sat down beside his bed, and every time he'd scream and point at something, I'd hit with that fly swatter. And whatever he was seeing would go away.
Oh, funny.
I sat there all night and beat the boogers off Rudy. And my life changed that night. Somewhere in the wee hours of the morning, it became important to me that Rudy get well. I was no longer there for me. I was there to help somebody else get well. First time in my life I ever cared more for somebody else than I did for myself. It's a delicious feeling.
I love
And
it.
I've always remembered that. And I've always remembered that when I go to help somebody today, I'm sincerely interested in your sobriety. Thank you, baby. I enjoyed what you had to say.
Oh, thank you, Roy. That was sweet. Tom or Juanita?
Hi, Luther. Tom Ewell, recovered alcoholic, and so wonderful to hear you. I'd heard your talk before, but we never met, but we sure had some good friends in common. And man, you had me in tears. Clint was a good friend of mine as well, and a mentor to me, and I still tell his stories, stories that impressed me. I told him one time after he gave a talk, I said, I hear you. And anyway, we were connected. And before I get started, I love your prodigal son on the wall there. I just got to tell you that. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, okay.
And but what happened to me was I didn't have any step experience. I was 6 years sober, and I'd gone out to hear Joe Hawk speak in Amarillo, Texas. I'm from Santa Fe. And he quizzed me on some stuff like how do you write inventory and this and that. And apparently I wasn't giving good answers because he said, you need to go catch up to the rest of us and go up to Breckenridge, Colorado this summer, and that was in '93, to the Fellowship the Spirit conference. And so I did, and Juanita went with me. We were the first New Mexicans to go up there, and there were just a ton of great people. Gary was there, Don Pritz was there, Bob O, just amazing people. Earl Husband from Oklahoma was such a great guy. And but what I remember more than anything was Clint on the 9th step, and he was telling these stories that I had never heard anything like that. See, where I came from, if the men's was going to hurt you, you were others, so you didn't have to do it. And he was talking about going and making an amends to a guy who had told people in AA he was going to shoot Clint. And it got my attention, man. It just completely rocked me, you know. And I think we became friends from then on. And I used to follow him around and go to his workshops and stuff. And one of the things I always remember him saying is that he was developing compassion for that part of himself that was never going to get it, and be okay with that. And I think that's so important, you know, because that part is the part we're going to help other people with. I really believe that. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, these stories have been popping up. I'm just shooting them out as they come. But one I'll never forget, and I've told this over and over, is the story he told about when he was first sober. And I don't know if it was Glenwood. I don't know California from
Glendale.
Glendale. Yeah, that he was at the club there. And these two guys got a 12-step call, and they went out to see this little drunk who was, you know, a bachelor in some little ugly little room. And they got their linoleum floor, and there was I don't know if you remember this story, and there was a print on the wall that was a Mexican scene of a burro carrying wood. But by the time they got there, the guy had gotten a bottle, and he said, "Thanks for coming, but you know, no thanks. I don't want what you got." And they said, "Okay, but you know, we come a long way. Let's tell the story." And he said, "No, I'm not interested, but thanks anyway." And they said, "Come on, man, and he said, "No, leave, get out of here." And as they were leaving, the one guy looked at him, he said, "Let me ask you one question. How long's it been since that burro winked at you?" And the guy said, "Sit down. I think I want to talk to you." I love that story. I think that's a great AA story. You know, I'll be working the rest of my life to repay AA.
Amen.
And I never heard it put better. There's a gal, Kristen D. She's in Pennsylvania now, but she was in South Bay, Los Angeles. And recently on a meeting, she said, "I am beholden to Alcoholics Anonymous."
Yeah.
And I am too. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Tom. Very sweet. I don't see any more hands, Sam.
You know so here's what we do. Then we just start picking on people. What about Judy? What about Judy L? My friend Judy LeVazy. I saw her on there earlier. Are you around, Judy?
I
There
am
she
around.
is.
Hi, everybody. Hello,
Hey,
family.
Judy.
It's so good to see you and to hear these stories. I remember being so impressed with Clint Hodges. And I was drawn to him because he had that kind of humor that you do hear and I hear in this meeting, and the kinds of stories that go straight to your heart. And I can even remember watching a video of his funeral, which tells you how bad I had it. But thank you, Luther. Thank you so much for sharing that sweet story of yours. One of the things that I really am always personally wondering about is when you guys have all been talking about that part that just doesn't get it. And I really want to appreciate that in everybody, because I can't tell you how often I think that I'm just a fraud because I don't get it all the way clear to my toes. And then I'll have some question come out and go, "Yeah, but what about that? You didn't get that. And you're not, and they're all better with God than you are anyway. What about that? You're going to fail AA." Now, I can't tell you how many times I've had that thought. Fortunately, I usually have to show up to a meeting about the time I'm quitting AA. So I usually have to show up and make coffee or do something. So I've never actually gotten to act on it, but I can't tell you that hasn't often, what a relief it is to just hear everybody else saying that they have that piece too, that says there's that piece that didn't quite get it. And maybe in fact, I'm going to fail AA. And what do you do if you fail AA? Where do you go then? So, you know, it's just been really comfortable for me to hear people talking about that piece. I'm no model of sobriety, and I'm probably one of the slowest healers and a person to get any of the stuff that I've gotten from Alcoholics Anonymous. Can't even say it. But I have to tell you, nobody is more grateful for the fact that, as unwilling as I was when I got here, and as lacking in understanding and as I have been throughout many phases of my recovery, nobody's been any more blessed than I've been with the fruits of the work that I've done and the people that I've known. So I'm really grateful for that. And thanks for calling on me, Sam.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
You remind me of that line in our book that says, the consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. There's so many wonderful, flat out statements in this book that are so true.
Yeah.
Looks like Karen's up here.
Yeah, what about our friend Karen H? Karen, take it away.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm an alcoholic.
Karen.
Thank you very much, Luther, for your share, for your service here tonight. This is my first time at this meeting. I think you're here every Thursday. It's great. I feel I'm so, that feeling of like, you know, when I got to AA, it was like, what did I do to just be so blessed? And I'm kind of having that feeling just because I just need this so much in my life, in my sober life right now. You know, I'm 15 years sober, and just, you know, like we are all going through, you know, different things in life, but it's, you know, I'm such a chameleon. I've always been like, you know, that chameleon. And when I heard that, when I got into the rooms, other people talking about that, I thought, and it's, you know, and it's, but it's okay, because I know I'm with other chameleons too, you know, and I mean that in a good way. I'm just, you know, as you were sharing, I could see your story. You know, everything you were saying, I could see it in my mind's eye. And especially when you were talking about that, the man that was, you know, sort of blabbering or whatever. And then you shared with him, you shared your story, and how he sat up and said, you know, like that was just, it's just, I'm so incredibly grateful. I can't even put it into words that I'm here, and I'm going to be okay, because I have that awareness. You know, I have work to do, and anyway, I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much.
I love you. It's just you're so sweet and so honest. You're in there. Just keep going.
Well, Shelley.
Hi, my name is Shelley. I am an alcoholic.
Hey.
So nice to hear about Clint Hodges. Clint Hodges, Cindy, and Rob Kozacek and Miriam, they started a 5 o'clock meeting because they all start doing the work. And that meeting is still going on today. And I think I met you there years ago. But the greatest thing he ever accomplished was the men's stag that he started. And that's still going on till today. And I was talking to Hamid, and Hamid said I used to bring chicken wings to that meeting. And I've sponsored a few men that still go to the meeting. And it's nice what you hear here. When you leave here, you leave it here. And when I heard that in the beginning years ago, I said, that is so cool to hear that, that you can't bring it out of the meeting. I thank you for your share. I had to lay down. My legs are killing me, you know. I'm not 80 yet, but I'm inching up there soon, you know. I started hanging out with people my age now, and everybody's complaining about the aches and pains. And I'm grateful I heard the message when I was a year sober. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I called Joe Hawk. I said, I need help. And I've been on the bandwagon since then, and I'm very, very grateful for the design of living that was shown to me. And I get to help others, and I get to hang out in meetings when I have the chance, and want to thank you. He was such a gentleman. The first time I came to the meeting on Saturday, he walked across the room and says, "I want to welcome you, Shelley." And I remember him at FOTS. And I said, "What a fabulous story he has to say." And I found him on some like you could listen to YouTube, and I found a talk of his, and it's beautiful. I listen to it occasionally, and I could just picture him like he never really died. He just moved on to somewhere else. What a gentleman.
Yeah.
And he treated people with such dignity. It was beautiful.
Yep.
So thank you for reminding us about Glenn Hodges. And glad to have you on this journey.
Of course.
Thank you.
Shelley, was Jaime your husband?
Yeah.
I used to go to your meeting on Saturday at 5:30.
Right.
Yeah. Good to see you again.
Thank you. I look a little bit better standing up.
You look good, girl. You look very good.
Thank you.
All right, Jackie, how about you?
Hi, my name is Jackie, and I'm an alcoholic from Iowa. It's so good to be on this meeting. And Luther, I have never met you, or nor have I ever heard you, but I just love you. I'm just going to tell you, I just feel like you're one of the bestest friends.
Yeah.
Dude, it's just, you just warm my heart so much. But early when you were talking, you said something about, and when you first went to an AA meeting, about the magic language they spoke, and that caught my ear because early in my recovery, I was talking to my sister about, being sober, and it was a new beginning, and da 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 da. And that I was going to speak at this little local group. And I said, well, it's a beginning, I don't, she sent me a quote, and it said, "In all beginnings dwells a magic force for guarding us and helping us to live." And that has meant so much to me, because I do feel so like there's something magical in our meetings and in AA, and as we grow in the program, it's just like, being a little girl for me, and the thrill of magic, and dancing around. And I feel that way, the little girl gets to come out in a magical way. So thank you for those words. And I just really enjoyed listening to you. You are a sweetheart. I just want to give you a hug. That's all I'm going to say.
How was that good? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. What about the handsomest man from the Pacific Northwest? Jimmy. What are you doing over there, handsome? Looking good.
I don't
Tan.
know about that, Sam, but Jim alcoholic, and I'm actually in Luther's neck of the woods out in the desert recently, and that's probably why I'm glowing and I've got a little sunshine around me. But actually, truth be told, I'm glowing because I've been fortunate enough to hear Luther twice in the last week. He was speaking at my friend Carl's meeting last week in Covina, and the love of Alcoholics Anonymous that I think, I aspire to grow towards or can see in other people is, when our ego's removed and we're in this space of wholeness, and that we've, my hopes are to evolve in the same way that I see in Luther. That is just transparent love. And you, Sam, as well. I was thinking back on a little reflection here lately. You had lead this meeting, I think almost about a year ago. And what a moment that was in time to look back to. Here I was, a guy with about 18 years sober, spiritual pride, and thinking I was doing the deal. And I started reading that letter, and it just broke me right down to the knees. And I just looked at the attachments I had and the conditions on life. that I wasn't even aware of, and how this letter was just written for me and all of us, that when we get entangled. And, you know, I remember putting my everything on the life raft at my home in Seattle, and I was looking at the Sound over at Indianola, where actually Luther led a retreat there as well years ago that was so special. And I live across the water from there, and I had my money and my life and my fiance at the time and my business and all these important things, and I just detached and I let go, and I was the happiest, well cared for, nurtured guy in the planet with my creator, and I had everything. And from there, you know, I've gone on this kind of quest of less is more, and a year later I can't even, you know, take the rest of the meeting to just proof positive how everything worked out seamlessly for me. But, you know, the caveat in that was, and I love the end of the letter, you know, we know unconditional love of helping that newcomer, and the, you know, love that we have that is available when I get into my self-centeredness and I, you know, question, you know, where I'm at. If I'm working with a new guy, then there is God, as Luther just said, you know, and he's sitting across the table, and I do anything in the world emphatically for that guy because I can see God through that. Yeah. And I can see my soul through his. And that's a gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is where I am okay. And man, I just am so happy to see you and to be in this secret place of the Most High with my people. And I like that prodigal son on the back of Luther's wall there as well. That was speaking to me. And thank God I can see, you know, I can see when I get here with my people. I'm awake. And there's nothing better. And Luther, I think I'm going to take the Spanish class at College of the Desert. That's right up my alley, man. So love you guys. Good to see everybody.
Yeah. Their Spanish teachers are the best in the world. They're amazing out here. It's just amazing. Trust me when I say it's so good to see you, Jim. It's really good to see you. Yeah.
Luther.
The prodigal son here, you know, is my favorite painting in the world. It's a like an 8 by 10 foot painting, and it sits in it hangs on the wall in the Heritage Museum in Russia, in China, Moscow. It was Catherine's, and but it's painted by Rembrandt, who was one of us. You know, he died a pauper. He was a drunk, and it's my favorite painting of all. He was in love with the alcoholic. You know, he painted him in bordellos with hats with feathers and wine glasses and girls on his lap and so on and so forth, you know. But this one is my story, and it's your story. It's the prodigal son. He's come home, and he's in his underwear. He's all tattered and torn, and he's dirty, and his head is shaven, you know, and his shoes are all worn down. He's Jewish. He's been working on a pig farm, by the way, and would fain eat the husks at the, you know, and he woke up and he said, wait a minute here. The servants in my father's house are living better than I am. So he went home. And that's what we did. We came home. I told you I'm a crybaby. Can't help it. It's all your fault. Anyway, who's up?
Yeah, if you haven't read that book, you know, the reason I do this, call it a spiritual workshop, is so that we can bring whatever literature. But, you know, Kenny, my buddy up in Seattle, turned me on to The Return of the Prodigal Son by Henry Nouwen, which is an expose on that whole painting and that whole work. It's a beautiful book. I mean, it's one of my favorites. So anyway, it's called by Henry Nouwen, Return of the Prodigal Son. And it's a lot about Rembrandt's life and that portrait. It's, anyway, whatever that's worth. What about my man, Kurt?
Alcoholic. Thanks, Luther. I really, really appreciate your I guess your spirit, just your, authenticity and your, that genuine emotion that just comes through you. I think I originally met you at Sierra Madre at one of the retreats up there.
Oh, wow.
With Bruce and Rick and all the guys. It's kind of amazing the people that have been mentioned tonight. Tom mentioned Bob Bogue. I haven't heard Bob Bogue was inspirational guy to me too, along with all the people you mentioned. But you said something that I really would want to touch on, and you said, you said a couple things, and one of them was, for a long time, I was looking for the spiritual experience, and I realized one day I was looking from it. And you said that great reality is deep down within you. And that right there was the magic, I think. That was the real magic. It was that sense of I belong in the world. I fit. I'm an integral part of this thing. And I took a long way around to that. I drank it 19 years. I wrecked my life more than once. I wrecked it a couple times. And it's interesting because you said another thing, the consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. And I think this is the deal. I think this is that internal revelatory experience that a lot of us have here, where we realize there's no place to go and there's nobody else to be except you. I heard it said one time, be yourself, everyone else is taken. And there was always a sense of, oh, if I could be like him when I first came in, or I could be like them, or I could be, and that dropped. And I really get the sense of what you were talking about when you said, when you really realize that great reality is deep down within you. And, we had a talk, me and Don, the other day about this, this is something that happens in a fifth step. When two or more are gathered, I'm in the midst of you. And when two of us are gathered for the purpose of truth or seeking, both people's thought life are placed on a higher plane. And that sense of spirit is present. And it's present because it's in us. And I think that's the real beauty here. The real beauty is waking up to that. When you wake up to it, you wake up to the fact that everybody else has got it, whether they know it or not. And,
Yeah.
That's the journey, right? That's the journey, is to help somebody touch the gold within themselves.
Yes.
And really, when, like you said, when that happens, when you see somebody shift, when you're in the presence of a human being that wakes up, has that epiphany, it's a very magic. I mean, there couldn't be anything more important
Right.
in life. There couldn't be. So thank you very much for your presence tonight.
Yeah. And I would like to say, of course, thank you. I would like to say one thing regarding that, and I believe this with all my heart too. Not one person can be excluded. This is available to every single being on the planet. Okay. Not one can be excluded. Not one. It was our gift at the foundation of the universe.
That's good stuff. Let's see who we got here. Luther, you see anybody else on here you want to rattle their cage just for fun?
Oh, I just saw Bruce Cherish pop in. Are you there, Bruce?
I'm here.
Bruce? All right.
Look, there he is, for crying out loud. They let you out of jail early?
Well, I heard you were speaking today and I was so upset because Gay and I had some things to do, but I just rushed back because I haven't seen you face in so long.
I
But
know.
so I did not get to hear what you had to say, but I'm sure it was wonderful.
We've had a good
And I was
time.
just thinking of something that Kurt just said, and I remember hearing you speak after you had started working with Clint, and I thought, what happened to Luther? He is a different person. And, you know, we had known each other a long time at that point.
Yeah.
And I just was blown away. And I remember I had dinner with you and Carol Morgan and a couple other people because I was just so curious, like, what the hell happened to you? And then I ended up kind of where you ended up and having the same experience you had.
Yeah.
And like Kurt said, you know, I got woken up in a way that I didn't know was available in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know how asleep I was, but I had no idea of the possibility of working those steps and how it could change a person's awareness. And I don't know, whenever I see you, Luther, it's like you always were so kind to me, and you and Pat, and I guess, you know, we've been kind of walking the path together for so many years, and we've all changed so much, and I don't know, it's hard to put words on it. I guess there's nothing like having history with people in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
And watching each other grow. It's just the greatest thing. And just knowing that there's another person in the world that was loved by Donald Madden the way that I was. And, you know, it's still what has been one of the most important experiences of my life, was being loved by that man.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So here we all are, and how wild that, you know, you and I are meeting at this meeting.
Yeah, I know.
Of all places, you know. So thank you, Sam, for having this meeting. Anyway, I don't really have anything to say. It's just so great to see you. And you know, Gay and I are moving to Dallas, so I don't know if I'm going to get out to Palm Springs ever again.
God.
But hopefully our paths will cross.
I
Thanks,
hope.
Louis.
I love you, brother.
Yeah, I love you too.
Say hi to Gay for me, okay?
I will. Say hi to Pat.
I will. I certainly will. She was so surprised when I said I heard from you today.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's part of the thing I was talking about. A fellowship will grow up around you, you know. These ties are so strong that we have with one another. Bruce could call me from Dallas to say, you know what, I need you. I would get on a plane and go, period. No questions asked, okay? So anyway.
There's, you know, Tom told me that story about Clint a long time ago. And the way that he said it to me originally, the way that I heard it was, he said, you know, I've come to believe there's something about me that's just never going to be right. And I just need to learn to love that part. And I always thought about that level of humility in relation to ourselves. In the book, it says, you know, a greater maturity, which is to say humility in relation to ourselves, to others, and with God. You know, there's a part of me that's a little effed up, you know, that might never be right. And I'm okay, you know, but it's funny how when I get cracked open and every time I get really awake, I've just done a really good amends or gone back to the steps or really work with somebody, how open I am and how awestruck I am by the things around me. You know, I'm amazed again. And I get, and I cry easily, like joyfully cry easily, you know, and then I just go back to sleep a little. Then I kind of not go back to sleep, but, you know, worldly clamors, mostly within myself, get me to where I'm a little duller than I usually am right after that. And I probably shouldn't walk around like a raw nerve like that all the time, but it's a pretty beautiful experience. So Luther, what about over the last, so you got sober and you worked the steps with Clint, you did all this stuff. So what about the last, let's say 15 years of sobriety that you've had? Have there been any like bottoms that you've hit in sobriety or new surrender experiences that you've had to have where you just, you know, re-went through the work again and
No, I'll tell you, it's strange you would ask that question because a year ago, January, I'm sitting there minding my own business, meditating in the morning, you know, what I call meditation anyway. And it floated through my mind, you know, failed to enlarge his spiritual life. So I bought about 12 books. And this falls in line with what Don Pritz used to say as well. You know, God uses whatever's at hand. Because I bought religious books, I bought spiritual books, all kinds of, you know, and I have found, see, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a language. And I'm able to read any of those things. And whenever I come to a word that maybe I don't agree with, I use the words of Alcoholics Anonymous, like great reality, creative intelligence, whatever. Those kinds of words that I understand, you know. And so I launched out on this journey, you know, of trying to improve my spiritual life. And it's still going on, you know. And now you know, I listen to this whisper. I think I alluded to it earlier, you know, when you get the whisper, when you get the nudge, pay attention, do it, you know. For instance, 3 guys came to get me when I was out there and brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. It took 3 of them to get me. And I'm sitting there, and about 3.5 months ago, I heard this whisper, and it says, call Ron Hurwitz. And that was one of the guys. I called him up. We laughed. We carried on. We cried. For an hour and a half, right? Don't you know he died 2 weeks later? I was so grateful I called him. This guy was one of the people that took me out of that pig pen that I was in and brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, people that I would never be able to pay back, you know. So yes, there have been a lot of, I have had so many tremendous shifts in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, they've just about blown the top of my head off, you know. But I'm going to tell you one thing. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. It can be little, because you didn't hear my story tonight about going up the mountaintop, a crazy and a rat, spending the entire night up on the mountaintop, falling into every piece of cactus up there, wearing the seat of my pants off, the color of my boots off. It just goes on and on and on and on and on, you know. But when I finally got home, when the police brought me home that morning, they ran a make on me. He said, "Are you drunk?" I said, "No, sir, I am not," you know, but I'd thrown my car keys away. So he brought me up to my front door. And when Pat answered the door, we weren't speaking at that time. If everything that could go wrong in a marriage went wrong, you know. And anyway, the policeman looked at her and said, "He's not drunk." You know? And he pushed me through the door. And I said to Pat, "I don't know what to do." And she said, "I think you better get cleaned up first." And I thought I would never get my clothes off. I was so many stickers in my skin and through my clothes that I was bloody. I'd scraped my leg all the way down to the bone. I was a mess, I'm telling you. And I finally got my clothes off, and I'm standing in the shower, and I saw the blood go down the drain, you know, from my leg. And I started to cry like a child, you know. And I knew 2 things for sure in that moment in time. I knew that I was an alcoholic down to my big toe. And the second thing I knew was I can't keep myself sober. Something far greater than I keeps me sober. Like I said earlier, everybody on the planet tried to get me sober. Something far greater than I keeps me sober. And you know, that simple little tiny incident is so significant in my life today, because some force is operating in my life. And I know that it operates in me and through me. Like Clint said, God will love you through me, and he will love me through you. It's reciprocal, because we all have it. I don't just have it, we all have it. So anyway, man.
So before we got 2 minutes left, we're trapped on an island, or but let's just do this, like top 5 books of the last year that you would suggest somebody to read. Somebody just asked you, "Hey man, what's in your book collection? What's your favorite thing to read right now?" Top 5 books, spiritual, non-spiritual, whatever.
You're going to laugh when well, Kathleen McGowan wrote 3 books. One's called The Expected One, and called The Book of Love, and the other one's called Poet Prince. If you're real religious, you might not want to read these, but because they're kind of a different approach. But I fell in love with those books. I'm telling you, you know. There's a book that you can still find it. It's not in print anymore, but if you can find it, it's off the chart. It's called The Road Back by Joseph Kessel. It's a story of us. A guy in Paris fell in love with us and vowed that when he came to the United States, he would look up the guy that he met in Paris. And they took him from the Bowery to Manhattan and the lights and all of that. It is our story. A non-alcoholic could hear us and write about us. It's absolutely pure magic. It's called The Road Back, you know. And oh my, let's see. Oh, there's another book too. I know you probably all read it, but The Sermon on the Mount by
Emmett Fox.
yeah, Emmett Fox. It's off the chart. This was one of the books that in my Fail to Enlarge His Spiritual Life, I poured through that book. I studied it. I underlined. I went nuts with it, you know, and it's fabulous. So those are 5 that I would highly recommend.
Well, thank you so much, Luther. Really appreciate you. And I'm saddened that our time is at an end tonight. So anything that you thought of or anything that you may have thought of that you want to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No. One of these days, I'll invite me back again and I'll tell you my story.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love that. We'd love to see you again. So the way we close this meeting.
Yeah, I think I fell in love with you guys.
No, yeah, man. It's been fun. Real fun. So let's do this. We usually mute ourselves and just go to our inner room and say the Lord's Prayer to ourselves, because it's kind of chaotic on Zoom to hear everybody, 100-something people, pray with a delay. It sounds a little more schizophrenic than it does as harmonious in a real meeting. You know what I'm saying? So we'll just mute ourselves and we'll quietly, if you'd like to, say the Lord's Prayer inwardly. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
Hello,
Bruce, good seeing
Juanita.
you.
Sam, thank you for inviting me. I had a
blast.
Had a wonderful time meeting all of you.
Awesome meeting, Sam. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Luther.